everyone. Welcome to the JW Review. My name is Mike Felker, and this is the weekly podcast where we review Watchtower articles and compare them to what the scriptures teach. What we're doing this week is we are going to be looking at the Watchtower that all Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide will be studying this very week. It's normally what we do every week, but every once in a while, if a study article is not that interesting, we'll pick a different topic to discuss or a different article to address. Last week, we looked at the little flock and what the little flock actually means in Luke 12:32. So if you're interested in answering that question, go back to last week's podcast and you can check it out there. This week's article is titled Understanding Headship in the Congregation. All right, so we're looking at this article and just asking, does the Watchtower line up with the scriptures? And that's what we do on all of these podcasts. If you are a faithful Jehovah's Witness, still attending meetings, still very much in it and all that, you have nothing to fear here. I am not an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I have no formal association with other religion whatsoever. I am a Christian, a follower of Christ, and I'm just trying to give you something else to think about. And I'm trying to show you not just what to think, but how to think. So let's delve into this article. And we have the key text here as Ephesians 5:23. It says, "For the husband is head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body." Verse 24, "But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything." Now, what you'll notice here is and you'll notice this in the article as we go over it, there's a big elephant in the room. All right, if you're trying to think like a Jehovah's Witness here, there's a big elephant in the room. Well, what is that? Well, I guess you're missing a few things in this passage, right? Think about all the authorities that a Jehovah's Witness has in their life, their life in their religion, that is. You've got the elders, you've got the circuit overseers, you've got the governing body, you have everything that is published by the Watchtower, right? But that's basically directly attributed to the governing body since they approve all of that. You have all of this authority structure, okay? But why didn't Paul mention that here? Why did he jump from just talking about husbands and their headship to their wives and their families? Why did Paul parallel that to Christ being head of the church? Why didn't he go to talk about elders and their roles and governing bodies and their roles? Why didn't Paul do that? Well, we'll get into that in this article here. But it's just really interesting that Paul doesn't talk like a Jehovah's Witness would here. Let's look at paragraph 4. And this isn't going to be the point of the article. It's just something that we're going to look at in passing because it's just really important to talk about some of these things. The rest of the article really is going to deal with a headship and authority and things like that. But we see here the Watchtower bringing in the anointed class and the earthly hope and things like that. So let's read and see what paragraph 4 says. "The Bible indicates that Jehovah values women as well as men. For instance, it reveals that in the first century, Jehovah gave Holy Spirit to women as well as men and empowered them to perform miraculous works, such as speaking in different languages. They both have been anointed by Holy Spirit with the prospect of ruling with Christ." And they cite here Galatians 3:26 through 29. And that says, the Apostle Paul is writing here to the Galatians, "For you are all sons and daughters of God." Through what? Through your heavenly hope? No, it's through faith in Jesus Christ. That's what makes you a son and daughter of God. Now, under Watchtower Theology, that is not exactly the case, right? You can only be a son and daughter of God, or a child of God, or a child through adoption, if you're part of that heavenly class. Now, if you're part of the earthly class, you're merely a friend of God. Now, you don't see the Apostle Paul or any other biblical writer making these distinguishing marks between these two different groups. You don't see that. Faith in Christ makes you a son and daughter of God, plain and simple. Verse 27, for all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Jesus Christ. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendants, heirs according to promise. Yeah, see what's missing here? What's missing here is the ruling in heaven. The text just doesn't speak of that. But also, it doesn't speak of any type of class separation, earthly and heavenly. In fact, this text just completely obliterates that, because verse 28 is just trying to say that, we're not going to be separating ourselves into classes, because we're talking about our unity and our oneness in Christ. And all these people are sons and daughters of Christ. You can't separate those from the friends of God. It just doesn't work. It's not in the text. The Watchtower just makes stuff up here. And they do it again in the next sentence. Women as well as men will receive the reward of everlasting life on earth. We've discussed Revelation 7 a number of times. What you'll notice is that in Revelation 7, you don't have two different locational hopes distinguished from one another. It's not that it doesn't say anything about the 144,000 being in heaven, and it doesn't explicitly say that the great crowd is on earth. It's just the locations aren't in focus there. There's not even a clue talking about the 144,000 and where they will be as distinguishing from the great crowd. It's just not there. Read the text. If you have a question about it, ask me. But go back to my 2021 memorial review that I did a couple of weeks ago, and you can find more details on this text. All right, so let's get into more of the subject matter of this article, and that is just headship and authority. Paragraph 8. The heading is every brother the head of every sister? The short answer is no. A brother is not the head of all sisters in the congregation. Christ is. So who's the head of the congregation? It is Christ. Well, this sounds great, right? We can agree with the Watchtower here, right? Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we can agree with this language here is basically just quoting Ephesians chapter 5, verse 23. But I would say no, because functionally speaking, this is not how the organization works. They may say that Christ is their head, but they don't act like it. They don't act like it. And we'll see why here in a moment. Continuing on in paragraph 8. Let's just read the rest of it. In the family, the husband has authority over his wife. A baptized son is not the head of his mother. And in the congregation, the elders have only limited authority over sisters and brothers. Limited authority. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, let's continue on. Single women who no longer live with their father and mother continue to respect their parents and the elders. However, like the men in the congregation, they have only one head, and that is Jesus. So Jesus is the head, but elders have limited authority over the sisters and brothers. Now let's just look at the text here. There's two texts they cite here. 1 Thessalonians 5:12, which reads, "But we ask you, brothers and sisters, to recognize those who diligently labor among you and are in leadership over you in the Lord and give you instruction, and that you regard them very highly in love because of their work. Live in peace with one another." All right, so who are those who are in leadership? Well, that's got to be the elders, okay? In Hebrews 13:17, we've discussed this text a number of times. It says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account. so that they may do this with joy, not groaning, for this would be unhelpful to you. So what does it mean to obey your leaders? All right, now the text in 1 Thessalonians 5:12 just said they have leadership, but didn't really tell you the level of that leadership or how the leadership is determined or where's the line. Well, I think Hebrews 13:17 gives us some information on this because it says obey. Now, a Jehovah's Witness might say, okay, well, that means just I need to do whatever they say. Well, is that right? Well, not necessarily. Look very closely at this. That word obey, it actually means to persuade or to believe or trust. So you believe based on persuasion. So they have to actually build up your trust. All right? They have to build up your trust. It doesn't mean that you have to obey them unquestionably on everything they ask you to do. No, because they can overstep their bounds. And when they do overstep their bounds, well, you no longer trust them, right? So why would Paul, if Paul wanted you to do everything that the elders said for you to do, why would he use a word like this that means to believe or trust based on persuasion? It's not just that a leader is appointed and you just have to obey them. No, it doesn't work like this. This is not the same thing as like, I guess when the rulers of your land, wherever you live, they make a law and you just have to obey the law or else you're punished. It's not like that. Because when laws are put into place by the government, it's not like you just have to be persuaded, right? It's just the law. Like when the new speed limit is set, well, that's just the law. You've got to obey it or you could get fined or arrested. It's not like that when it comes to elders. It is by persuasion. All right, let's continue on with the article. Paragraph 10. Elders love Christ, and they love the sheep whom Jehovah and Jesus have placed under their care. It was really interesting to me that they cited here John 21:15 through 17. Because this is Jesus speaking to Peter. And Jesus is telling Peter, or asking him, do you love me? And then he says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And then Jesus says to shepherd my sheep. What's missing here? Well, what's missing here is instruction to elders. This is not a text about elders and the role of elders in the congregation. No, this is Jesus speaking to an apostle. Now, I'm not saying that elders don't act as shepherds. Of course they do. They shepherd the sheep. But this isn't a text about elders. I mean, you see the parallel with like language, but why wouldn't they go to a text that's specifically speaking about elders? Why go to this text? With good intentions, an elder might think of himself as a father-like head in the congregation. He may reason that if a family head has the right to make rules to protect his family, an elder can make rules that he hopes will protect God's sheep. And some brothers and sisters may encourage elders to act as their spiritual head by asking them to make decisions for them. But the elders in the congregation and family heads have the same authority. I highlighted here this language of might or may or can because these are just like hypotheticals, right? This is just speculation. Why is the Watchtower just speculating here and saying may and might? They don't have any scriptures here to support these speculations whatsoever. So what's the point in it? Because as a Jehovah's Witness, you're looking at this as these are the words of the governing body. This is what the governing body has approved. And you're supposed to obey it and do whatever it says in these articles. You can't doubt it, at least not out loud. You can't raise your hand when this is being discussed this week in your congregation and say, hey, why is the Watchtower speculating here? Why don't they cite any Bible verses for their speculations? What's going on? Can you imagine a Jehovah's Witness doing that? I can't. Paragraph 11. This is where they're trying to answer, do elders have the same level of authority that family heads have? This is really interesting here. Paragraph 11. The Apostle Paul implied that there are some similarities. There's some similarities between the role of a family head and that of an elder. There's similarities between family heads and that of an elder. And they cite here 1 Timothy 3, 4, and 5. Paul says, now this is speaking of an elder, he must be one who manages his own household well, keeping his children under control with all dignity. But if a man does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? And not a new convert, so that he will not become conceited and fall into condemnation incurred by the devil. And he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into disgrace and the snare of the devil. You got to read this carefully, because what this is not saying is Paul is not comparing or making this talking about similarities between how you run your household and how you run the church, as if he's saying that these are kind of the same thing. No, he's just talking about the requirements for the elders. All right? So if he does not know how to manage his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? So Paul's not saying that they are run in the same way. It's just saying if you can't take care of one thing, you can't take care of the other. So Paul is not talking about the similarities between both. He is just talking about the requirements for the role of the elder. Well, it doesn't get any better as we continue on here in the paragraph. For example, Jehovah wants family members to obey the head of the family, and he wants those in the congregation to obey the elders. Well, where did Paul say that? Where did Paul say in any of these texts just cited? Well, he doesn't. The closest thing we have is Hebrews 13:17. So I'm okay with that word obey as long as we understand what that means. It's to have obedience through example or trusting, right? You got to be able to trust them. You have to be persuaded by them. Jehovah expects both the family heads and the elders to make sure that those under their care are spiritually healthy. Yeah, so I agree with that. Both also care for their emotional needs of those under their authority, and like good family heads, elders make sure that those under their care receive help in times of crisis. And they cite here James 2:15 through 17. It says, if a brother or sister is without clothing and in need of daily food, and one of them says to them, go in peace, be warmed and be filled, yet you do not give them what is necessary for their body, what use is that? In the same way, faith also, if it has no works, is dead, being by itself. Well, what's missing here is that this isn't an admonition just for the elders. This is something that all Christians need to do. So why are they citing here a verse that is applicable to all Christians and talking about this being something that the elders are to specifically do? I don't understand why they're doing this. Why are they citing that passage and not one speaking specifically about elders? Aren't all Christians responsible for this? Of course. In addition, Jehovah expects elders and family heads to promote his standards and not to go beyond the things that are written in the Bible. Well, that's a really great text. Don't go beyond the things that are written in the Bible. Can we apply that to this whole article? Well, I think we can, because that's what Paul asks us to do. Because if you're just supposed to obey everything that is put in print here, at what point can you determine that they're going beyond the things that are written? Well, if you're a faithful Jehovah's Witness, maybe you would argue, well, they don't go beyond what's written. This is all Bible-based instruction. They don't go beyond what's written. Do you really believe that, though? because I think you'd agree with me that the Watchtower has put stuff in print that is not true. If they've put things in print that are not true, does that mean that they have gone beyond the things that are written in the Bible? If you're just using basic logic, you'd have to agree that yes, they do. Sometimes they go beyond the things that are written. Now, if you've been watching these reviews for any amount of time, you'll find that they often go beyond the things that are written, and you will find that to be the case in this very article, which I hope I am demonstrating to you. Paragraph 12. However, there are also significant differences between the role of an elder and the role of a family head. For instance, Jehovah has assigned the elders to act as judges and has given them the responsibility of removing unrepentant sinners from the congregation. And they cite here a text that so many Jehovah's Witnesses will be familiar with, because this is the primary text they go to show their whole doctrine or practice of shunning and disfellowshipping. So let's read this text. And let's go just to verse 9. Start in verse 9 and read some context here. I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. I did not at all mean with the sexually immoral people of this world, or with the greedy and with the swindlers, or with idolaters, for then you would have to leave the world. But actually, I wrote to you not to associate with any so-called brother if he is sexually immoral person, or a greedy person, or an idolater, or is verbally abusive, or habitually drunk, or a swindler, not to even eat with such a person. For what business of mine is it to judge outsiders? Or do you not judge those who are within the church? But for those who are outside, God judges. Remove the evil person from among yourselves. What's missing here? What's missing here is any mention of elders. Do you see anything about elders? Anything at all? I don't. Do you have a translation that says something different from mine? I don't. I would highly doubt it. There's nothing about elders here. Who is Paul talking to? Paul is talking to the Corinthian church. In other words, the Watchtower is saying that Jehovah assigned the elders to act as judges, but if we're going by the text here, you would have to read, Jehovah has assigned the congregation to act as judges, and he has given the congregation the responsibility of removing unrepentant sinners. Can you read this text and find a way to disagree with me on that? I don't see how you can. Now, I've gone over this text a number of times, shunning and disfellowshipping, things like that. So disfellowshipping is indeed biblical. I think this text is saying exactly that. It says, remove the evil person from among yourselves. And this isn't just a person who disagreed on some doctrine. This is someone who's involved in just gross immorality. Someone who is sleeping with a relative, basically. Now, Paul says in this text, that he doesn't mean all sexually immoral people of this world. When Paul says do not associate with sexual immoral people, he's specifically talking about someone who is within the church, who's in your congregation that hasn't been disfellowshipped. Because look, if Paul's talking about someone who's been disfellowshipped, not to associate with them, Paul would say, well, you can't do that because then you'd have to leave the world and just basically not talk to anybody who's not a Christian. So when there's any kind of shunning, if we want to use that word, it's only with those who the congregation has refused to disfellowship because of their gross immorality. Okay, now let's look at another text just in case you think that this is something only elders can do, which the text doesn't say that, but just to reinforce it, let's look at Matthew 18, a text that is rarely brought up by the Watchtower when it comes to disfellowshipping. Look at this carefully. Look at Matthew 18:15. These are the words of Jesus. Now, if a brother sins, go and show him his fault in private. Now, this isn't talking to elders. It's talking to just anyone who calls himself a Christian, who's in a congregation. Jesus continues, if he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two more with you, so that on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every matter may be confirmed. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen to even the church, he is to be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. So, again, what's missing here? What's missing is anything about the elders. These are directives for the congregation to implement. You know what's also missing here? Is judicial committees. It's like Jesus is disobeying the Watchtower's directives here, right? He is going contrary to the Watchtower directives, because what would happen in the congregation typically of Jehovah's Witnesses is that, maybe one Jehovah's Witness would go and try to offer a rebuke to another and they refuse. Well, what typically happens? Well, what typically happens is they report it to the elders. Then the elders institute a judicial committee, and then it goes from there. So that is a very noteworthy thing that Jesus is missing here. Paragraph 13. On the other hand, Jehovah has given family heads some authority that he has not given to the elders. He's given family heads some authority that he's not given to the elders. Now, what's really interesting here is this whole idea that I just mentioned about judicial committees. So, family heads have certain authority, but here's what's really interesting. When it comes to a judicial committee, let's say you have a married couple, and that there's a judicial committee with the wife, the woman. Why is it that in those committees, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you can't have the husband there on these judicial committees if this wife is doubting doctrine, or maybe even involved in some kind of sexual sin? I don't know what, or maybe she got caught smoking, whatever it might be that would land her there. Why can't it be that the husband can be there with her? Why do these judicial committees happen when you have a woman in a very vulnerable position with 3 men, maybe more? I'm not sure, but typically what I see is you typically have 3 men. You are there in the situation with a woman. That is just wrong. That is just wrong, and there is no scriptural directives for something like that. So if we talk about family heads having some authority, let me just say that if you're a husband, do not let your wife go into a judicial committee alone. Stand your ground. That is just wrong and unscriptural to allow that to happen. Do not let that happen. That is your role as the head of your household, to not let your wife go into that kind of vulnerable position. It will not end well. It will not end well. It can be quite destructive, as many stories that I've heard on that exact thing happening. Do not let that happen. All right, continues on in paragraph 13. For example, a family head has the right to decide at what time his children should arrive home at night. He also has the authority to discipline his children if they fail to obey that rule. Of course, a loving family head consults with his wife before making rules in the household. After all, the two of them are one flesh. So there's talking about here things that the head of the household can implement as far as rules that the elders can't really implement, because you just have different authorities having different roles, right? But here's what's interesting about this. while the elders in the congregation don't do these things in paragraph 13, think about what they do implement, the kind of rules that they institute. Everything from how many meetings you're attending every week. What happens when you stop attending all the meetings, when you start to miss one of the meetings each week with some regularity? Well, the elders are going to start to call you and say, hey, you should be coming to every meeting. What's going on? Also, if you're not putting in enough hours in field service, the elders are going to step in. What happens when you let your sideburns grow too long, or maybe you have a beard that's a little bit too scruffy, or let's say you're a guy and your suit pants are too tight. I don't know. I'm naming all these things that the elders basically micromanage. The elders micromanage. There's rule after rule after rule that, in my opinion, the rules are pretty pharisaical. They implement all these things. They can micromanage you. In fact, I'd say in a lot of ways, the elders can micromanage you far worse than a family head can do in their household. Paragraph 14, respect Christ as head of the congregation. By means of the ransom, Jehovah purchased the lives of each individual in the congregation and potentially all of mankind. Purchases the life of each individual in the congregation. What that seems to imply here with using that language is that just by sheer membership, you can have a resurrection or purchase the lives just by sheer membership. Where in any text does it say anything of the kind? Now, since you're potentially all of mankind, well, the condition of that would be whether they actually believe in what Jesus Christ has done for them. All right, now, biblically speaking, if they don't believe, they don't get a resurrection to life. They get a resurrection to judgment, and they will be judged based on the sins they have committed in this life. That is the scriptural teaching. That's in John 5:29. But this just gives a very strong implication that just by membership in this group, you're going to be okay. That is false. That is unbiblical. That is a very dangerous way of thinking, that by your membership of a group, you're going to be saved, you're going to be okay, you're going to have salvation. That is just not scriptural whatsoever. The only basis by which you can be saved and have salvation and have a resurrection to life is if you have faith in Christ. That is the only thing that you have to hold on to for your salvation, is Christ and what he has done for you because of your faith in that promise. That's it. The paragraph continues, so it is fitting that he appointed Jesus, who gave his life as a ransom, as head of the congregation. As our head, Jesus has authority to make and to enforce rules that govern the conduct of individuals, of families, and of the congregation. Well, that's great. I agree with that, but it's too bad that is not the reality. That is not the reality. Because what we see here is finally the elephant in the room being addressed. This little sidebar over here that says the role of the governing body. Let's read this. All right, so we just saw all this stuff about elders and about family heads and things like that, and about Jesus being the head of the congregation, and he's the one who makes the rules. All right, so let that sink in. Jesus is the one who makes the rules, but does that functionally take place in this religion? Let's let the words of the governing body speak for themselves. The members of the governing body are not masters over the faith of their brothers and sisters. I cite here 2 Corinthians 1:24. It says, not that we domineer, which means to rule over or to dominate over your faith, but we are workers with you for your joy. For in your faith you are standing firm. So what Paul is saying here is, we're walking beside you in all this. We're not domineering or ruling over you. Continuing on here in the paragraph, they recognize Jesus Christ as head of the Christian congregation, and they agree wholeheartedly with the Lord's admonition to his disciples. All of you are brothers. Well, that sounds nice, but is that really what takes place? At the same time, they love their brothers and sisters very much and do their best to care for their needs. Under the headship of Christ Jesus, the members of the governing body provide helpful direction to organize Jehovah's people worldwide. So it sounds like, oh, well, they're just under the head of Jesus Christ, just like you are. Now, if that is really, really true, are you able to step in and cite Jesus' words in Matthew 18 and tell the governing body that they have gone beyond the things that are written in instituting these judicial committees and instituting these shunning policies? Because if they're really under the headship of Christ, just like you are, you should be able to take the words of Jesus and go to the governing body and offer a loving rebuke, that they have gone beyond the things that are written. And this is where I'm just trying to show you that words are cheap, right? They can say all day long until they're blue in the face that Christ is the head. Christ is the head. But that is just not functionally how it works. Now, in a sense, I'm okay with having leadership roles to organize things worldwide. So, for example, if you want to have a missionary organization that sends missionaries all over the world, and they want to organize that and making sure they have Bibles in the right languages and food and ways to get engaged in other projects, I'm okay with having a group of Christians to organize things like that. But the governing body goes far, 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 far beyond all of that. Okay? It says here, they appoint branch committee members and circuit overseers. So I can go to Ephesians 4:7, and I can find a mention of a governing body. Oh, interesting. Let's take a look at that and see. I'll read this whole text. And you tell me, do you see anything about a governing body in this text? But to each one of us grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore it says, when he ascended on high, he led captive the captives, and he gave gifts to people. Now, the New World Translation says he has given gifts in men. Most Bibles don't say that. They said that he gave gifts to men. Gifts to men. And by the way, there's nothing there about saying gifts, manifesting themselves in the governing body. That would be reading into the text. It's not there. Verse 9, now this expression, he ascended, what does it mean except that he has descended into the lower parts of the earth? He who descended is himself also he who ascended far above all the heavens, so that he might fill all things. And he gave some as apostles, some as prophets, some as evangelists, some as pastors and teachers, and governing body members. Nope, it's not there. Paul somehow, some way, missed the governing body, right? He missed it. Why did he miss it? Maybe because it doesn't exist. So these things, the apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, are for the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to the measure of the stature which belongs to the fullness of Christ. Now, the Watchtower says that the governing body appoints branch committee members and circuit overseers, but even that's missing in this text. So we're missing a governing body who appoints, but we're also missing branch committee members and circuit overseers. That is just not in the text. It's not in the text. The governing body also takes very seriously its responsibility to provide spiritual food and instruction from God's Word. The governing body does so through letters, printed guidelines and publications, JW broadcasting programs, as well as through schools, meetings, conventions, and assemblies. let me just break this down for you. The governing body tells or requires all true Christians worldwide to obey everything that they put in print, and if they question it, they can be disfellowshipped and shunned by all their friends and families. That's the interpretation of this, because you know that's true. You know that is how it works. If you go to Acts 15, we've gone over this text a number of times. The group there was only there to resolve a controversy. It wasn't a group that was permanently formed to put in print everything that Christians are to believe worldwide for everyone, for all time. It's just not there. It was a group to resolve the controversy about circumcision and the Gentiles and the church. Plain and simple. It has nothing to do with a printing program, right? Nothing to do with that whatsoever. And that does not give the responsibilities to any kind of governing body. The Watchtower is making stuff up, and I hope you can see that. Last, they say, and when a natural disaster or some other calamity strikes, the members of the governing body, moved by heartfelt love for their brothers and sisters, immediately take action to ensure that practical help will be provided. Now, I'm not saying it's not good to take care of your own, but when has the governing body ever instituted a program to take care of people who are not Jehovah's Witnesses? Can you name an example? Can you even name an example where a single Kingdom Hall has gone out to provide relief work for people who are not part of their group? Maybe there's an example. I don't hear about those examples. I don't see that being put in print. I mean, I read these articles every single week. They're published, whether I offer a review here or not. I read them. I've never seen an example of relief work being put towards non-members. Is that obeying Jesus? Doesn't Jesus say to love your enemy and to do good, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great? Jesus nowhere says only take care of your own, right? He says to take care of the ones that you're not always prone to taking care of, because they might be your enemy. But Jesus says to take care of them and to love your enemies and do good, right? That's what he says. So that's all for this whole article. So I hope you can see see the elephant in the room here loud and clear, very loud and clear, that you have a governing body who may say that Jesus is the head of the congregation, but they act like they are the heads of the congregation, and they are that bridge between you and Jesus. They act more as a mediator, because they're the ones who enforce all of these directives and rules that everyone has to obey. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. I hope this review was helpful. I hope it gave you things to think about. If you do have any questions, or if you just have any comments, I love hearing from people. You can leave those comments or questions in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. You can leave your comment on my website, michaeljfelker.com. I also post all of these reviews there too. And by the way, someone mentioned to me last week that they leave comments on a lot of these other channels that engage with Jehovah's Witnesses theology and whatnot, and they don't get replies back. Just letting you know that if you ask me a question, I can almost guarantee you that I will respond to that. So I do read every comment. I don't always respond to every single comment. If it's just a comment, I might like it or something like that. So I don't necessarily reply to every comment, but if it's an actual question, I will do everything I can to respond to that. So please, even if you disagree with me, leave me a question, leave me a comment. I love to sharpen my thinking, and I love to just engage with people and to do that respectfully. So you don't have to be afraid of me getting angry or anything like that. Please, leave your comments or even your disagreements. Especially if you have just some ideas on how I can improve this podcast. I am all ears, open to listening to any suggestions. You can also contact me privately if you want to have more of a private discussion, whether that's through Skype or through email or through WhatsApp. go down to the video description. There's a number of ways that you can engage me there in that particular way. We can keep it private, keep it anonymous. All that is okay. Beyond that, if you want to support this, the best way for you to do that is to share this material with anyone who might benefit from it. That's the best way you can support this. Another way is financially through Patreon by becoming a monthly supporter, whether it's $5 a day or $5 a month versus $20 a month. Any support is very helpful. That helps keep the lights on, helps just cover some of the costs that are incurred by having this on various podcast platforms and having a website and things like that. So that does support this, and also to improve the quality of this material. Just some other things that I'd like to do, like having a live stream and things like that. Some of that requires subscriptions that cost money, but nonetheless, we continue this work either way. So thank you all so much who are supporting this work in all the ways that I mentioned. So I'll leave it there. Hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next week. For more information about Jehovah's Witnesses and other topics, please visit michaeljfelker.com. There you can also reach me directly to submit questions or comments to be covered on the JW Review. To subscribe to this podcast, please go to iTunes and search for the JW Review.